Welcome back to Hopeful Horizon, where we bring you stories that challenge perspectives, spark conversation, and leave you thinking long after they're over. Today's story takes us into the high-stakes world of television, where one of the most influential figures in media, Oprah Winfrey, sits down for an explosive interview with talk show host Elliot Graves. Known for his aggressive style and controversial takes, Elliot is determined to shake Oprah's empire, but he has no idea what's coming. What begins as a simple conversation quickly turns into a battle of words, power, and perception, with the entire world watching. Will Oprah fall into his trap, or will she turn the tables in a way no one expects? Stay with us as we dive into a gripping story of resilience, grace, and the consequences of underestimating the wrong person. If you love stories with unexpected twists and powerful moments, don't forget to comment below and let us know where you're listening from. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an unforgettable story from Hopeful Horizon. The energy inside the studio was electric. Bright stage lights bathed the sleek, modern set of Elliot Graves Tonight in a warm glow, bouncing off the glass coffee table that separated the two chairs positioned center stage. The audience murmured with anticipation, some leaning forward in their seats, while others gripped the arms of their chairs in excitement. They knew tonight's episode would be one for the books. Behind the scenes, the production team buzzed like a well-oiled machine. Producers adjusted earpieces, camera operators checked their angles, and the control room staff monitored multiple feeds, ensuring everything was ready for the main event. The guest tonight was no ordinary celebrity. She was a titan of industry, a media mogul, a philanthropist, and an icon, Oprah Winfrey. Elliot Graves sat in his dressing room, adjusting the cuffs of his navy blue suit with practiced ease. He smirked at his reflection in the mirror, running a hand through his carefully tousled dark brown hair. He had built his career on pushing boundaries, on forcing his guests into uncomfortable conversations, exposing contradictions, and challenging their public personas. Tonight, he was gunning for Oprah. He had spent days crafting his approach, ensuring he would catch her off guard. His goal, to expose her as an out-of-touch billionaire who no longer understood the struggles of everyday Americans. There was a knock at the door. His executive producer, Monica Stevens, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped in. "You ready for this?" she asked, arms crossed. Elliot leaned back in his chair, exuding confidence. "More than ready. The internet's going to eat this up." Monica raised a skeptical brow. "Just remember, this is Oprah we're talking about. She's been in the game longer than you. Don't underestimate her." He chuckled. "That's what makes it fun." Meanwhile, in a separate dressing room, Oprah Winfrey sat in front of a large vanity mirror, her makeup artist applying the finishing touches. She was calm, collected, as always. Decades in the media had sharpened her instincts, and she already had a sense of where this interview was headed. Her assistant, Grace, a young woman with tightly curled hair and glasses, adjusted Oprah's earring before stepping back. "Are you sure about this? Elliot Graves isn't exactly known for playing fair." Oprah smiled warmly. "I've handled tougher men than him. He's just another host looking for a moment. Let's see how this goes." A stagehand knocked, signaling it was time. Oprah stood, smoothing the elegant royal blue dress she wore, and took a deep breath before heading toward the stage. The audience erupted into applause as her name was announced. She walked gracefully under the bright lights, flashing her signature smile as she took her seat opposite Elliot. The battle of wits was about to begin. The applause still thundered as Elliot leaned forward, flashing his charming, media-trained smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have the honor of welcoming one of the most influential figures in media history, a woman who has built an empire, changed lives, and inspired millions. Please welcome Oprah Winfrey." The audience clapped enthusiastically as Oprah nodded graciously, hands folded in her lap. Elliot let the cheers die down before speaking again. "Oprah, it's truly a pleasure to have you here." "Thank you, Elliot," she said smoothly. "It's great to be here." Elliot started soft, as he always did, lulling his guests into a false sense of security. "Your journey is nothing short of incredible. From humble beginnings to becoming one of the wealthiest, most powerful women in the world. People admire you. They see you as a symbol of hope." Oprah smiled. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had, and I never take them for granted. Elliot nodded, pretending to soak in her words. Then he pivoted. But with great power comes great responsibility, doesn't it? And some might argue that when someone reaches a certain level of wealth, they become disconnected from the struggles of the average person. Do you ever feel that way? The audience murmured. Oprah remained composed. Elliot, I come from nothing. My beginnings weren't privileged. I've walked in those shoes. I know what it's like to struggle. Elliot's lips twitched, barely hiding his satisfaction. Of course, no one can deny your past struggles. But what about now? You've built an empire worth billions. Do you really understand the struggles of everyday Americans anymore? Or have you left them behind? The tension in the room thickened. Some audience members nodded, intrigued by the question, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Oprah took a measured breath. Success doesn't erase my understanding of struggle. It fuels my passion to help others. When you know what it's like to have nothing, you never forget. That's why I've dedicated my life to philanthropy, to education, to lifting others up. It's not about wealth. It's about what you do with it. Elliot wasn't backing down. He leaned in, pressing. But how do you justify being a billionaire in a world where so many people are barely getting by? Doesn't the existence of billionaires contribute to inequality? A hush fell over the crowd. Oprah studied Elliot carefully, reading the intent behind his words. He wanted to trap her into either defending extreme wealth or appearing hypocritical. She smiled. I believe in using what you have to create opportunities for others. I built schools for underprivileged children. I fund scholarships. I invest in communities that need it most. Wealth is a tool, Elliot. The question isn't whether billionaires should exist. The question is, what are they doing with their resources? The audience applauded, some even cheering. Elliot's jaw tensed. He was losing control of the narrative, but he wasn't done yet. That's admirable, but isn't it fair to say that systemic change requires more than just charity? Shouldn't billionaires be taxed more, give up more of their wealth? Doesn't the very existence of the ultra-rich prove that the system is broken? Oprah's expression remained unreadable. Systemic change is complex. But here's the thing. Every person in a position of power, whether it's in media, business, or politics, has a choice. You can either criticize from the sidelines, or you can take action. And Elliot, I have to ask, what have you done, personally, to uplift the communities you claim to advocate for? A stunned silence fell over the studio. Elliot blinked, momentarily thrown off. The audience turned their attention to him, waiting for his response. For the first time in a long time, Elliot Graves didn't have a comeback. The air inside the studio was electric. The tension, thick enough to cut with a knife, crackled between Elliot Graves and Oprah Winfrey. Elliot, his signature smirk still plastered across his face, leaned forward in his chair, sensing that he had finally cornered his guest. Isn't it ironic, Elliot began, his voice dripping with feigned curiosity, that you, a woman who built her brand on helping others, now sit among the elite? Aren't you just another rich person telling poor people how to live? The studio audience let out a collective gasp. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd, some nodding in agreement, others visibly uncomfortable with the way Elliot framed his question. The cameras zoomed in on Oprah's face, expecting a moment of hesitation, perhaps even defeat. But instead, she smiled. It was the kind of smile that spoke volumes, one that held the weight of experience, resilience, and unwavering confidence. She crossed her legs and let the silence stretch between them, allowing Elliot to stew in his own words. The audience held their breath, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Elliot, she finally said, her voice smooth and steady, I didn't inherit this. I built it, and when I made it, I turned around and lifted others with me. The crowd erupted into applause. Elliot blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. He opened his mouth to retort, but Oprah wasn't finished. You say I'm out of touch, but tell me, Elliot, when was the last time you built a school for underprivileged children? When was the last time you mentored young entrepreneurs? When did you change a single life beyond words on a screen? The room fell dead silent. Elliot swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. His usual bravado was nowhere to be found. Oprah, still poised, turned her attention to the audience, as if speaking directly to every viewer watching from home. "We have to stop this narrative that success means forgetting where you came from," she continued. "The real question isn't why I'm successful. The real question is, why do people like you, Elliot, tear down those who have worked to achieve something?" Elliot shifted in his chair, sweat beating at his temple. He had spent years controlling the narrative, but now, for the first time, he was losing control. The audience burst into standing applause, and the studio cameras captured every second of it. The damage was done. It took mere minutes for the moment to explode online. Clips of Oprah's rebuttal flooded social media, spreading like wildfire across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. The headlines wrote themselves: "Oprah ends, Elliot Graves live on his own show." "Elliot just got schooled, Oprah's epic clapback." "Talk show, host tries to embarrass Oprah, instantly regrets it." The video racked up millions of views within hours. Celebrities, journalists, and everyday people alike weighed in on the heated exchange. Real Talk News. Oprah just gave a masterclass in handling media bias. Elliot Graves got what he deserved. Pop Culture Insider. That moment when Oprah asked Elliot what he has done to help people and he had nothing. Meanwhile, Elliot's mentions were a war zone. His own viewers began questioning him, calling him out for hypocrisy. Sponsors quietly began distancing themselves from his show. Ratings, which had been stable for years, suddenly plummeted. In the confines of his office, Elliot scrolled through the wreckage. His face was pale, his hands clenched into fists. He had faced backlash before, but this was different. This wasn't just criticism, it was a reckoning. "We're losing ad revenue," his producer said, her voice tight with worry. "Sponsors are pulling out left and right. The network's demanding damage control. What are we going to do?" Elliot exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "We get ahead of it," he muttered, trying to sound confident. "We release a statement. We spin the narrative." But before he could devise a strategy, a new headline emerged, one that sent an icy chill down his spine. Elliot Graves' dark past resurfaces. Allegations of misconduct come to light. Elliot felt the blood drain from his face. He clicked the link, his breath shallow as he read the damning report. A journalist had uncovered an old scandal, one he thought had been buried years ago. The accusations were back, and this time, there was no hiding from them. Panic set in. "We have to shut this down," he snapped at his team. "We need a publicist, a lawyer, someone who can fix this." His assistant hesitated before speaking. "There might be one person who can help you." Elliot looked up, his chest tightening with dread. "Who?" The assistant swallowed, as if bracing for his reaction. "Oprah Winfrey." For the first time in his career, Elliot Graves was out of moves, and the only person who could save him was the very woman he had tried to humiliate. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone, staring at Oprah's contact. One call, that was all it would take. But would she even pick up? Elliot Graves sat in his dimly lit office, the blue glow of his computer screen illuminating the sweat forming on his forehead. His hands trembled as he scrolled through an endless stream of headlines. Elliot Graves exposed, the dark past of a controversial host. Former employees speak out against Elliot Graves. Allegations resurface. Did Elliot use his power to silence the truth? His world was crumbling, and it was happening fast. The backlash from his disastrous interview with Oprah had already sent his ratings into a nosedive. But this was the final nail in the coffin. A group of investigative journalists had unearthed an old scandal, one Elliot had spent years and a fortune trying to keep buried. Years ago, during his early rise in the industry, there had been whispers of inappropriate behavior, accusations from former staffers about a toxic workplace, threats, and hush-money settlements. He had been ruthless, leveraging his influence to kill the stories before they could spread. But in the era of digital resurrection, nothing stayed buried forever. Now, the internet was ablaze, and Elliot found himself on the wrong side of public opinion. Former employees were speaking up, social media was calling for his immediate cancellation, and his sponsors were pulling their ads. His producers, usually his loyal soldiers, were visibly nervous, whispering in corners, taking calls from network executives who were undoubtedly considering severing ties. "We need to get ahead of this," his lead producer Martin urged, standing anxiously by Elliot's desk. "A statement, something to show remorse, damage control." Elliot exhaled sharply. "A statement won't fix this. I need something bigger, someone bigger." Martin hesitated. "What are you saying?" Elliot stared at the phone on his desk. He knew exactly who he had to call. It was ironic, really. The very woman he had tried to embarrass, to discredit, to take down, was now the only person who could salvage what remained of his reputation. Oprah Winfrey. His hands hovered over the phone, hesitating. He had built his career on controversy, on tearing people down for the sake of ratings. And yet, for the first time in his life, he felt vulnerable. His finger pressed down on the number. The line rang once, twice. Then she answered. "Elliot," Oprah said, her voice calm, steady. For a moment, Elliot couldn't find his words. Then, finally, he swallowed his pride. "I need your help." Elliot sat across from Oprah in a quiet, private lounge of a luxury hotel. There were no cameras, no producers, no audience. Just the two of them. The man who had tried to discredit her and the woman who had nothing to prove. Oprah sipped her tea, observing him carefully. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his confident facade stripped away. This was not the Elliot Graves who dominated late-night television with his relentless takedowns. This was a man facing the consequences of his actions. "You could destroy me with one statement," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. Oprah leaned back, setting her cup down gently. "I could," she said simply, "but that's not who I am." Elliot blinked, surprised. "So, you're not going to?" "Elliot, do you know why you're in this position right now?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. He hesitated. "Because the internet hates me?" She gave a small, knowing smile. "No, Elliot, because you stopped listening." Elliot frowned. "Listening to who?" "To the people, to the voices that matter. You built your platform on controversy, on exposing people's flaws. But you never stopped to reflect on your own. You wanted to catch me in a lie, to make me look disconnected from the world. But the truth is, Elliot, you were the one out of touch." He swallowed hard, her words cutting through his defenses. "So, what do I do?" he asked finally. Oprah folded her hands on the table. "You take accountability, real accountability, not a PR-crafted apology, not some half-hearted statement. You use your platform better. You actually listen to people, and you stop tearing down those who are trying to make a difference." Elliot exhaled, nodding slowly. "That's easier said than done," Oprah smiled. "Most things worth doing are." For the first time in his career, Elliot Graves was at a crossroads. He had spent years believing that controversy equaled success, that exposure was more valuable than integrity. But now, sitting across from a woman who had spent a lifetime building rather than destroying, he realized how wrong he had been. The next morning, Elliot released a statement. Not a deflection, not an excuse, but an admission. "I have spent years using my platform irresponsibly. I have torn down more than I have uplifted. And in that pursuit, I lost sight of what really matters. I was wrong, and I am committing myself to do better." The response was mixed. Some called it performative. Others acknowledged the effort. But one thing was clear. Elliot Graves was no longer the same man who had tried to take Oprah down. And as for Oprah, she moved on gracefully, as she always had, because she had never needed to prove anything to anyone. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of power, humility, and redemption. This story reminds us that true strength isn't just about success. It's about how we use our influence to uplift others rather than tear them down. Oprah's response to adversity teaches us that grace and wisdom will always outshine arrogance, and sometimes the most unexpected lessons come when we least expect them. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to leave a comment and share your thoughts, and let us know where you're tuning in from. We love hearing from our Hopeful Horizon community. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss another compelling story. We'll be back with more tales that challenge, inspire, and spark meaningful conversations. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay thoughtful, and always seek the truth.